Okay, welcome everybody. I show 4 o'clock, and you are here at Ventana Wildlife Society's The Condor Chat. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful panel today. We also have an expert from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Joe Burnett will introduce Arianna here in a minute. I just want to give a quick introduction. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is the lead agency in the recovery of the California condor. They are the ones primarily responsible for the Endangered Species Act. And it is a true pleasure to be permitted by them all these years to work with bald eagles, before condors, and now California condors for the last 26 years. And I every time I think about the very first time I ever saw a California condor, I think of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because I was spending about a 10-day kind of introductory period, I guess, or something like that. So kind of a training, I guess you could call it, 7 years ago, in the mid 90s, late 90s, when the Fish and Wildlife Service invited us to reintroduce condors to the wild. We were finally given the authorization, and the very first thing that we did was go down to Lion Canyon, a release site that's no longer being used that I'm aware of, but at the time it was the main release site in Southern California that the Fish and Wildlife Service was using. And I got to spend a glorious 10 days up there at the field site, nonstop, just really getting absorbed, engrossed in this species. And it was just the most wonderful experience. And on the way there, David Clendenin, who was working for Fish and Wildlife Service, a long-term mentor of ours, was driving, and he pointed up into the sky and he said, there's a condor. And that was the very first one I saw. And I think most of you, or all of you that have seen a condor, you probably remember that first time also. So I can thank the Fish and Wildlife Service for mine. Anyway, with that, I'd like to turn it over to Joe Burnett and the Condor crew. So thanks for coming.
Thanks, Kelly. Good to be back. It's that time again. Yeah, like Kelly, I saw my first condor down at, I think I was at Hopper. And we're going to hear a lot more about that in a bit from our special guest, Arianna. Say hi to everybody. Yeah, we're going to give a full introduction here in a little bit. We wanted to give a quick update on the Central California flock before we got into the exciting stuff, to hear more from Arianna. And the Southern California flock, yeah, we always talk about the Central flock, but it'd be really cool to hear what's happening down there. Again, we're all working together to restore the species to California, and obviously they're the lead agency, so it's always an honor to have someone from their crew. And really cool. Arianna actually used to work in the Central California flock, so she'll tell us more about that. Yeah, today, quick agenda here. Just shout out to the crew as always, and then we'll get into HPI. We have the latest on that. We'll give you some exciting news on the rebuild. We'll give a quick overview of the Central California population, the status, and then we'll get into the 2023 nesting updates. And then again, we'll get into detail with Arianna and the SoCal stuff. I'm excited to hear. And I have today with me, I have Kara. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
She's going to help me with our Central California update. We got a lot of info. Pretty exciting month. When you say, Kara, we had a lot going on. Hit a major milestone, which I'm not going to spoil it. Spoiler alert. But before I get too far ahead, we also got Mike Stake here in the house, down there at the bottom. Say hi, Mike. You can turn off the mic and say hi. Come on.
Hello. Thank you, Joe.
Mike is always doing the hard work with all the non-lead outreach, and also helps a lot with condors. And he's going to help field all the questions today. So thanks, Mike.
Sounds good.
What do we got? The crew. Yeah, and so, I introduced Kara, but today we don't have Danae and Darren on our much earned days off. They're on a bit of a different schedule than me and Kara, but we try to piggyback our schedule so we can get more coverage with the condors out in the field. So we'll miss them this month, but they will come back. One of those two will be back next month. And again, Evan is still working with us. For those that remember Evan, he's still with us, just on a part-time basis. He's now our GIS specialist, which is really cool. And of course, we couldn't do a lot of this without our amazing Calco Central Database designer and extraordinary volunteer, Tim Huntington. So big shout out to that. Those are the folks and of course, our amazing crew of volunteers that are really starting to get more comfortable and really contributing to the project. So big shout out to the volunteers as always. So without further ado, let's get into the update. HPI. So this was as of last week. We should be getting a new update today. But again, no change in Arizona, Utah in terms of that outbreak is no longer active. The final death count was 21. It happened quick. Fortunately, it stopped, and we haven't had any additional HPI cases or outbreaks since, knock on wood. Really good news, 3 condors in care for HPI that survived have recovered and have been released. So really exciting news from the Arizona Peregrine Fund crew. And they also mentioned that they caught a couple untagged birds today over there. So they have some wild nesting going on in Arizona as well. Vaccine status. Finally got the results on the black vulture study. Really good news there. Birds that received the 2 smaller doses had 90% protection in terms of titers, and the single dose group had 70%. Both really good numbers. I'm not going to get too much into it. There's obviously a lot of interpretation there, and I'll leave that to the experts. But from what I've heard, that's really good news. That was the response we were hoping for. So we hope to see the same with the captive condors that are currently being vaccinated in captivity. And again, that's 2 groups, and there's one group receiving the 1-dose regimen, the other group's receiving the 2-dose. But we know initially the birds getting the doses have shown no adverse effects, which is the initial good news you want to hear. So we will hopefully have the results of those titers. We're hoping by mid-September. So keep your fingers crossed there. So good news on the HPI front. And again, we're doing our due diligence as they are in Southern California. All the release sites are managing and preparing for another HPI outbreak if it were to happen. And we're getting our ducks in a line to be able to respond if in the event there is another outbreak. So let's hope not, but we want to be prepared nonetheless. Rebuild update, really exciting. The cabin is this is our field cabin. Again, this supports everything we do at our sanctuary and where we release the birds, where we recapture the birds, everything we do to manage the flock and monitor them. This is where the crew stays, and it makes life a lot easier. So the cabin is getting closer to completion. They finished the roof. The next big steps, look at the inside. It's pretty cool to see this, seeing it take shape. And the view, of course, is amazing. Being close to the ocean is pretty darn nice. So Arianna, you're gonna have to come up check it out when it finishes. When we finish this. But yeah, the next steps are to seal it up and basically put on the steel siding, which is going to give us the ultimate fireproofing. And along the same lines of fire protection, we this week had the tanks dropped off. We're going to have 10,000 gallons of water on hand in the event of if there isn't a fire. There probably will be another fire, but hopefully not anytime soon. But we will be prepared in the event there is one. So next steps are getting these big tanks up that ridge beyond where those guys are. It's going to be a challenge, but we're working our way towards that. Got to have that water to protect the cabin. So really good news on the rebuild front. Everything's rolling there. Central California population. Yeah, we're at 93 birds. This includes 5 pre-fledged wild chicks. Kara's gonna give us an update on those chicks, the status of those later in a little bit. And we also, looks like we're getting 10 rookies this year and they will all be released at San Simeon. And then Arianna can give us an update on how many they're gonna release down in Southern California. But that's probably the biggest number I think we've ever released. So pretty exciting to see the captive production getting more, and we're able to release more birds. That's really the goal. Condor deaths, no changes since last update. We still have 6 total for 2023. and no more additional necropsies have come in particular for Unipero for 663. We're still waiting on that one. But again, you can see that, the leading cause of death, as it is in Southern California, is lead poisoning still even for 2023. So again, the work that we're doing and that project that Mike's leading up is really, really important, the non-lead outreach. So that's good news. This is a milestone moment. When you say, Kara, this was something long awaited for. We've been wanting to trap the birds for quite a while. And just a quick backstory, Pinnacles has had our back for, obviously we co-manage the Central California flock and has been trapping critical birds that we need to check for lead, change transmitters. So big shout out to Pinnacles National Monument. But obviously to be able to trap birds again in Big Sur was the ultimate goal. And we were successful. We gave it our first go. Karen Dene did an awesome job and toughed it out inside the blind. And we got five of the big dogs here. I mean, we got Redwood Queen, Shadow, Puff Daddy. I mean, come on. It was pretty cool to see these guys up close and personal again. Kind of scary, but also cool. It's kind of like anytime you handle condors, it's bittersweet. But and then of course Minerva and Sirius. And I almost felt like we should have, broken out the bottle of champagne. It was like setting sail for the first time. So much work, and big shout out to the crew and everyone, that helped make that happen. Obviously, all of our funders on the rebuild front, huge efforts. So to be up and operational again is, can't describe, right, Kara? It's like a giant elephant.
I know. I feel like it just made us feel like we were helping out and doing our job again, because we've Pinnacles has, as Joe was saying, has been trapping all of the birds. And any bird that was managed by Ventana, we would go over and handle, but it was bittersweet to kind of sit in the blind again. I know Danae and I both were in there for I think 14 hours. It was insane, but all worth it because we got these guys. And let's see, 209 Shadow, Puff Daddy, and then Minerva were all stealth, so we weren't able to track them at all. Anytime.
Describe stealth real quick, not to interrupt, Kara, but just so people that don't know that term.
Yeah, so they just don't have a working radio transmitter and don't have a GPS of any sort. So the only time we can kind of mark them as okay or healthy and doing okay is if we have a visual of them, which makes it a lot harder to track and just kind of, again, make sure they're okay. So we always try to have all of the birds have working radio transmitters. Of course, with not having a pen, a lot of these birds that we did end up trapping, they don't spend a lot of time over at Pinnacles, so we just haven't been able to trap them. They haven't been handled in 4 years, which is crazy. But they all have working transmitters now. They have new tags. I know if you're watching the Explore cameras, I'm sure you've noticed Minerva's tag. You can actually read it now, which is
It's so nice.
So awesome. And
so
then
209, it was 2019, right? Was the last time we grabbed. Yeah.
So what's that? 4 years? Yeah. So he was doing his own thing and avoiding the Pinnacles trap for sure, but we tricked him in the Big Sur trap. But it's awesome to be able to track them again and see where they're going. We put some GPSs on, so it's always fun to see where the birds are flying and hanging out. But it was an awesome, the trap view. You're just so close to the birds. I'm getting giddy because it's so exciting. And you can see every little bit of them. They can't see us, so there's a one-way kind of, all the windows have one-way film on them, so they don't know we're in there, but we can see them, and they definitely kind of look around and are all hanging out. And
I love the feet right there. That is just cracking me up.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they are very funny. And then this is Joe and I being judged, of course, by the peanut gallery.
Yes.
And you can see us, we're all decked out in our HPI protocol, safety, personal protective gear, just because we're going to handle birds, but we kind of suit up keep us safe and then also keep the birds safe as well.
Yeah, and I mean, good news on that front. Maybe share some of the results. Like
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, every time that we're handling birds now, we test them for HPI. So we'll take blood and also a cloacal and like mouth swab to test for either a current positive HPI result, or like if they'd ever been exposed to HPI like in the past. And all 5 of those birds tests came back negative. So that was super awesome news. All 5 of them have never been exposed to HPI and don't currently have it. Obviously the result we all want. So just encouraging news for sure.
Yeah, and on the same note, we always, like we've always done, we check for lead too. And unfortunately, we did have a high lead score, right?
Yeah, so 881 had a pretty high lead score. Again, we have tracking stuff on her. We're keeping her on our list of birds to watch. Just we know the like symptoms of lead poisoning. So if anything's concerning, we'll definitely, try to retrap her and help her out. But she's acting normal, fine, like totally fine right now. So we're not too concerned right now, but yeah,
I think one of the really cool parts of the new pen is, fortunately we were successful fundraising, and it allowed us to to give us more space, which at the end of the day really benefits the birds. When you say, Kara, we just have more space to work inside.
definitely.
And it was just really nice. We had a place to set up the centrifuge, which we do for the HPI studies that are going on right now. We can now centrifuge on site. We used to have to walk all the way up to the hill to a truck and plug it into the cigarette adapter and do all this crazy stuff. So
yeah, so in that picture, so there's Caitlin, she works over at Pinnacles, and then on the photo is Rose holding the one and only Puff Daddy,
the king,
Puffy man himself. But Caitlin and I are spinning the blood to get the serum to test for HPI. So we kind of spin right on site so that we can send those off to the lab and have them tested.
Yeah, it was just all around great effort, and it was cool to have. Yeah, it was great to have Rose and Caitlin there to help out. Yeah, anytime you try it, even if we know how to design pens pretty darn well, but it's never really proven until you get some birds in there. So it was a big relief just to see how well it worked. It just it all came together, and
I think it went a lot smoother than all of us. We knew it would be fine, but like I think it all kind of went smoother than we thought it was going to.
Yeah, so pretty exciting. So yeah, we're gearing up for a big roundup this fall when the temps cool off a little bit, and yeah, we have a lot of birds too. And hopefully by then we'll have a vaccine in hand, and we'll be giving vaccines to these guys. So until we figure out what the vaccine regimen is, it will depend on how we do it. But yeah, we'll keep you posted on that. So again, tune in next month and we'll have more on that, hopefully.
But definitely very exciting to be trapping again and getting working tags and transmitters on these birds. So yeah. So another thing that we did this summer was we partnered with CSUMB to have a undergraduate research researcher, and her name was Valerie, and she killed it. She did an awesome job, and did her poster presentation last week. So Danae and I went over to support her. And she was really just looking at like dominance and behavioral hierarchy in the population, and hopes to just continue to do that, but kind of with the hopes of seeing if we could find indicators to like look for to kind of predict and look at lead poisoning more. Kind of using behavioral keys and clues to figure out if a bird's sick or not. So she had an awesome time and learned a lot and did an awesome job. So
yeah, it's just cool.
Rewarding.
Yeah, really cool to collaborate with CSU Monterey Bay, with their students. So hopefully this is the start of many more research projects, right?
Yeah, hopefully. It was cool too, because her project was definitely very different than all of the other projects. A lot of them were kind of lab based, and hers was totally in the field. She came up to base camp with us and did some feed outs, and it was different, but
She was a trooper. She definitely she was right in there.
Yeah, she did the dirty work for sure.
And didn't she do a lot of her observations through the cams?
Mhm.
Yeah. So she set up trail cameras and then also watched the live cam, the Explore cam. So she was kind of looking at the Explore cam for those different behavioral things, a lot of like kind of displacement and stuff. And then she was also taking her trail cameras that she set up and kind of going through footage that way as well.
That's awesome. I've really
Yeah.
enjoyed the partnership that we have with the local university, CSUMB. It's
Yeah, it was
brilliant.
cool to kind of get involved and I don't know, just mentor someone.
So yeah, our nesting update, we still got our 5 active nests, 3 chickies on the coast and 2 inland.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
wanna-
and all of them seem to still be going well. Which we'll talk about in a little bit. Some of the nests we enter and kind of manage more than others. I know, I'm trying to think. Pinnacles entered 1215 or 569 and 589's nest. And chick 1215 looks great and has a tag now. And I think they're entering 236 tiny and 340's nest this next week. So yeah, but all the chicks look good. We're excited to see them continue to grow and fledge soon. And this is 1204, 204 and 646's chick. And that chick is growing. Like those flight feathers are like adult feathers. That's crazy.
Yeah, this chick is almost full grown.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn close. Yeah, it might fledge a little earlier than some of the others, I think. It's definitely ahead of the growth curve.
Yeah,
Really well
it's a
fed.
fun age too,
This chick
because
is
they're like
definitely-
really working on like getting those flight muscles. So they have a bunch of energy, then they're flapping their wings a bunch and hopping all over the place. So they're definitely have a lot of energy at this age, which is fun to watch.
Yeah, this pair has been pretty consistent at this redwood, so pretty exciting to see them. Their last chick was 1089 that everybody knows.
Yep.
1089 is doing great. So yeah, and just to see birds, it's be in the 1200s right now is really interesting, is pretty cool.
And it's cool. I know I think the last Zoom that I was on is when we found out the stud book, but it's so cool that it's 1204 and the dad's 204. So
Yeah.
they'll both have the yellow 4 tags, which is really cool.
Like Pops, yep.
Like Pop.
If he is the Pop, no.
I know. And
Wait till we
then
get the
this
blood back.
is, oh, sorry, Joe, I cut
No,
you
go
off.
ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, this is 652 Ferdinand and 550's nest. So this is chick 1230. We still think this one's going well. We're continuing to go out and kind of do nest observations. This cavity is really hard to see into. It's a really like deep cavity. So it's kind of, you can't see as much as kind of the last cavity. But yeah, they're great parents as well. And then we have 219 Puff Daddy and 538 Miracles chick, 1229. Again, this chick is growing and this is really easy to see into the cliff. So you can really see this chick like jumping up and down and practicing flying and stuff. And
Yeah, this photo is them approaching the nest. So you can see
Yeah.
off to the right, you can see 538 off to the right, and then that's 219 flying in, Puff Daddy coming in for the landing. The nest is down to the left there.
Mhm.
And then it was pretty cool. They both came in and fed. So the chick got a really big meal. And here's a photo of 538. It's kind of a little fuzzy, but you can see the chick shoving its beak into mom's mouth, getting a
That's
nice
a great
fresh
Yeah.
regurgitated meal. Nothing like
Delicious.
hey, but it's fresh, right? But yeah, one of the more interesting ways to feed your young, the condors definitely take the prize there for probably one of the grossest way to feed your young, but it works. It works really well. So
Like partially digested rotting meat.
yeah.
My favorite.
Hey, pre-digested. I mean, come on. But yeah, so this chick's doing great. Like Kara said, when I was out there, that chick would not stop moving around. It jumps, it spins, and they do all these really funny maneuvers when they're excited. And yeah, I would say this chick gets the activity award, I would say, of all the chicks this year.
It's got a lot of space to move around. So that's definitely helpful.
Yeah, it's got a dance. You kind of got a dance thing going on, I think.
Mhm. But I'm swaying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Oh,
and this
these are
was
cool.
the
Yeah.
most exciting thing we did. Well, everything's exciting, but we with Pinnacles did a nest entry with this nest last week. So 1229 got blood work done. So we'll be able to figure out the sex of the chick, probably still in like a couple months or something, but before it fledges, we'll know. And it also got a new tag and a transmitter. So we'll be able to kind of, one, know who this chick is when it fledges, and also be able to track where the chick goes, which is always super helpful. And then we also tested it for HPI, and that test came back negative as well, which is awesome. And tested for lead, which lead came back. It didn't have 0 lead in it,
Yeah.
which is always sad, and kind of disappointing. But yeah, kind of got the whole health check and got a new tag, and yeah, we'll be able to know who this chick is when it leaves the nest. So one less.
You can tell this chick gets a lot of sun by how dark the head is. Usually at this age, they're a little lighter. Like I know down in Southern California, the caves are really deep and they'll be really pale. And Arianna's going to give us an update on their birds. But yeah, this one gets a lot. This chick's out a lot on the ledge and moving around. So got a little more of a tan going.
Yeah, and then these are the 2 Pinnacles nests. As I said, they're both going great. The 1215, they already entered that nest, and that chick's a female, which is always good to have more females in our population. And then they're going to do the 120-day entry for 1238, I think, this next week. But again, both of those are still going well.
Yeah, we'll have more on that next month for sure. Yeah, so good year, 5 chicks. Real quick, Evan map. Sorry, it's a little grainy, but yeah, just some summer movement overviews. He wanted to highlight the seasonal pattern. And you see down there, 227 is back in SoCal. We're going to hear more about that from Arianna, so I'm not going to do too much detail on that. But you can see the general core of the range up here where the highest intensity of red is. That's the Central California range, if you want to call it. And you can see Big Sur, San Simeon, and Pinnacles National Park. And then, of course, you see the little trail of 1027 heading down to where Bitter Creek is, Bitter Creek Wildlife Refuge. And again, Arianna's going to get more into that. And then what's cool is you see all these spots going up into the Sierras, up to Sequoia National Park, and some really cool, amazing spots in Southern California. So yeah, and it's seasonal. Like in the winter, it tends to focus down to Central California, and then in the summer is when we see our big flights, either to the north. And actually in this map, you can see we had recently some birds go up just east or right up near Mount Hamilton, Lick Observatory. So pretty cool to have bird. We typically see that every summer. Sometimes they've gone beyond that. They've gone all the way up to Livermore, almost to Mount Diablo. So yeah, not as far. We get bigger movements to the south, and maybe that's because there's another flock down there. Who knows? But we are surprised we don't see more birds heading down there. 1027 is definitely set apart right now from most of the other birds, and how often that bird's been going down and how long it's been staying down there. So maybe 1027 will bring some birds back with it, some Southern California birds. It never tends to happen. We don't know why, but eventually it probably will. But yeah, basically that's it. Kara, do you have anything to add on this slide that I missed, or anything I
don't think so. I think it's just cool to see how far 1027 is moving, and she's kind of come back up to Central California and then gone back again. So she's definitely, I think she likes it down there, but she always comes back too.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of 161. Is she still alive and well down in Southern California?
Yep.
Thank goodness. That bird is, how old is that bird now? It's like 26.
26.
Yeah. That is awesome. I always call her the defector though, because she left Big Sur and moved to Southern California, but I still have very,
Yeah.
fond.
A little bitter.
Yeah, she's been one of their top breeders down there for a long time. Yeah,
It's
she was
awesome.
with she was with 107, who was their most dominant. He was kind of the alpha down there for years, right, Ariana? And then
Mhm.
and then
Now she's with 509 and they're actively breeding this year. And I have a photo
Cool.
of their chick. So
awesome.
stay
Awesome.
tuned for that.
Yeah, we're gonna actually get to you right now. We wanted to give another big shout out to our volunteers, our tracking program volunteers, and of course our explore.org cam viewers. You guys contribute a ton. So big shout out to all of you. You know who you are. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got that in today. So our special guest, Arianna, thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pleasure to be here. Much like 1027, I feel like my home is Central California. That's where I started with the Condor program. I was an intern at Pinnacles National Park and was there for about 5 years. And so I was really familiar with those sites and some of those nests that we were looking at. And yeah, definitely know Joe and Kelly and Mike pretty well, getting to know Kara more. So it's really great to be here. And we, since I started with the Fish and Wildlife Service in 2021. So I'm still pretty new to this area down here. But since I've started, I was able to bring on a couple more Central California folks. I've got Amy List, who used to be with Ventana, and then Nate Melling, who worked at Pinnacles for a little bit too. So we've got a very blended Southern California team down here with lots of Central California influence. But yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the Hopper Mountain National Wildlife Refuge Complex. We are part of the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we have 4 wildlife refuges that are managed through our complex, and 3 of those refuges were actually created solely for condor habitat and recovery. And those are Hopper Mountain National Wildlife Refuge down here, Bitter Creek National Wildlife Refuge, and Blue Ridge, which is in the Southern Sierra. What's really cool about the Fish and Wildlife Service is that it's the only public agency that actually operates with wildlife and habitat and plants as on the forefront of their mission, whereas other agencies like the Park Service and Forest Service and BLM, they all operate with people and recreation and other sorts of things in mind, and they conserve this habitat, but yeah, it's for human enjoyment. And the Fish and Wildlife Service, while human enjoyment is part of the mission, it's mostly the focus is conserving lands for wildlife, plants, and habitats and fish. So
Yeah,
so
those
that's
are
really
amazing refuges. Like, I've been to Bitter Creek and Hopper. I don't think I've ever been to Blue Ridge, but
neither have I.
I know, but I think when I go to Hopper, I'm like, you immediately go, this is condor country. I mean, you just the crazy formations and the
Oh yeah.
nesting, and and Kara knows it as well. She was an intern down there, for a while.
I saw my first condor at Hopper as well. That's
Yeah,
what I call it.
pretty cool. I mean, that was the last stronghold for the species, really, that whole area. So
Exactly.
yeah, cool. And then Bitter Creek has its own characteristics too. Obviously you got some photos here. I don't want to get jumping ahead.
Yeah, they're very different. So you can go to the next slide. Bitter Creek and Hopper are our 2 wildlife refuges that we mainly monitor and manage the condors out of. So Hopper is down at the bottom, and I saw there was a question about the Sespe Condor Sanctuary. So Hopper is right adjacent to that sanctuary, and yes, there are condors that use that area very frequently. I don't believe that there aren't any nests in there currently, but there definitely could be in the future. Next slide. here are a couple of awesome photos of our parts of the refuges. So Hopper was actually established in 1971. It's pretty small, just like 2,500 acres, but it does butt up against that Sespe Condor Sanctuary. So lots of area for the condors to roam around in, and a lot of protected area. And Bitter Creek was established in 1985, and it's 14,000 acres.
That's
and that
huge.
was where, yeah, and that was where the last condor was captured in 1986. So a lot of history at both of these sites. And it's really awesome to work there. And yeah, both of these sites are close and adjacent to the Los Padres National Forest. So there's a lot of area that the condors can explore, and lots of areas for them to kind of get lost in. At least we lose them because they're in all these valleys and it's hard to get signals for them. But really awesome condor habitat.
I always think of Bitter Creek as kind of like more foraging, like typical foraging habitat that you've always, that we read about when we, what you read about is condor foraging areas, open grassland, rolling hills. And then Hopper, you have the dramatic formations, the big cliffs. And
yep, definitely better for nesting activity. So next slide. Like Joe said, Hopper is great for nesting activity. And so we have these really awesome dramatic cliff faces and mountains that are pretty rugged, and they make really awesome condor nest sites. I thought I had been on some gnarly nest entries in Big Sur at Pinnacles, but I've got to say, being out at Hopper really takes the cake for some rough nest entries. We have a running joke that you have to go to the Copper Canyon nest to really earn your stripes and become officially part of the nest. So we have a joke t-shirt. It's called like, I survived Hopper Canyon, but that's where 161 has been nesting, and where that bird nests now. You can see this red triangle with the blue arrow is 161's nest. You can barely see a little condor beak poking through that chemise, but so that's one of the horrible nest entry approaches, but it's a really cool nest.
That looks awesome.
Yeah, and so next
but
slide.
Brutal too.
What's that?
Brutal too. That looks like a mission.
Yeah, it's like a W-shaped approach. You have to hike down a super steep hill or mountainside, hike back up, rappel down one side, and then hike back up to the nest. And then you got to do it all in reverse. So it's not for the faint of heart.
For sure. Yeah.
So next slide. This is Amy. She was part of the Ventana crew not too long ago, but
Amy.
Hopper is also where we have a large network of condor nest cameras, because there are so many different nests out there. It's really helpful for us to put out some cameras in these nests to remotely monitor them and save us some time and effort and keep people safe by reducing the amount of times we have to go out. But yeah, I think this is just a really awesome photo of, you've got the egg in the background and one of the condors going back in. So
I love all the cable around her, all the communication cable.
I know, exactly. Amy's earned her stripes too. So next slide. Hopper, we also trap at Hopper seasonally. Although we have a much smaller window of trapping there, just because the birds don't hang out there all too often, and because our trap site is kind of in a valley, it's not very visible to the birds, but they tend to come around in December, and when they do, they come in droves. Next slide. This is our flight pen at Bitter Creek, and it's where we hold birds that have been bred in captivity, and it's where we release the birds out of. It's a much larger flight pen, open space, like Joe said. Bitter Creek is much more open, rolling hills, much better for foraging habitat. And we do have some seasonal grazers on our property and a lot of grazers surrounding the wildlife refuge. So birds are there pretty much year round, and it makes for trapping out there a lot easier. Next slide. We have a huge, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, cool shot. Sorry, I'm just jumping in there.
Yeah, so we have a huge predator fence around the Bitter Creek flight pen as well. And that's one of the main reasons that we only release condors out of this site nowadays. We no longer release birds out of Hopper or Lion Canyon or any other of those older release sites, but I was able to go to Lion Canyon last year. There was a condor nest that failed, unfortunately, but we went out there and that area is spectacular. It's just like this beautiful bowl of granite, and you just dip into there, and yeah, you're just amazed at why there aren't more condors already out there, but they're slowly coming back, which is really awesome.
Well, that's a good point. You know, people always ask me, is there enough condor habitat out there, especially nesting? And I'm like, they haven't scratched the surface. I mean, especially just up here, you know, and then you look it down there, and when you hear a story like what you just said, this whole canyon that's not even been tapped yet, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, the birds are exploring wider west and north along the Sierra, and I'll show a map in a little bit showing that, but yeah, it's pretty incredible. So next slide. So like I said, we do trap birds here. It's our main trapping and workup site. Very similar to the Central California coast. This was before HPI. This was when we were just worrying about COVID. If you're worried about the PPE, this was just during COVID times, which sounds funny saying.
Then, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we trap birds, we handle them. And unlike the Central California flock, we are managers, we don't take field blood and test their blood for lead in the field. We just take some samples to send them to the lab, and unless birds are showing symptoms of lead poisoning, we let them go. And we'll actually send them down to the LA Zoo if they are showing any symptoms of lead poisoning, or if they have any injuries. And we're really lucky that the LA Zoo is just about an hour and a half away. So we're pretty lucky there. Next slide. So this is just to give you some orientation again as to where we are in relation to the Central California flock and the rest of the release site. So just to give you some orientation, and then you can go to the next slide. So our birds have a very large range. So the Hopper Mountain refuges are in bright green, and you can barely see them on the map because they're just tiny postage stamps in relationship to the condor range. So all this warmer colors, the red is where there are really hot spots of activity. And then you can see birds are exploring more and more north, higher into the Sierra. And if you go to the next slide, you can see this year we had some really, really awesome activity. We had birds go to the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada. And then we actually had birds go into Yosemite Valley. And I think that might be the first time that we've actually had birds go into the valley. We've had some birds kind of graze the border, but if you go to the next slide, you can see that there were actually 3 birds. I didn't identify them on this map, but there were 3 different birds that kind of flew over the valley. So just, you can see the valley right here. There's the bridal
That's on
boat
my
falls
bucket
over
list. To see a condor in front of Half Dome. Come on, man.
Just say,
That's
that would be, what if a condor nests at Half Dome?
I know.
I
Those
know.
Game
big
over.
curtain walls. I
That'd
can't
be
even
so
imagine.
sick.
That would be
That would be
one of
really
those check
incredible.
boxes. I'd be like, yep, that's
Yep.
good. I've seen that.
Yeah.
Wow, this
So-
is so cool.
Yeah, 3 of our birds went up there just for the day, and it was 8:39, 8:56, and then one of our releases from last year, 10:43. So 2 adults and 1 juvenile who probably just followed them out there and was like, wow, guys, this is really cool. But they came back and they haven't been back up since, but it's still really awesome to see birds
crazy.
really exploring.
Just shows you the potential, right? You know,
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
really start moving when this population really starts taking off. It's just going to be wild.
I know, and that it's really awesome, but it also makes our jobs a lot
Yeah.
more difficult.
Thank God for GPS. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
Exactly. And
No
luckily
way
for
we're gonna
us,
keep up. There's just no way.
yeah. And luckily for us, the majority of our birds have GPS units. We try to have at least 70% of our birds wearing GPS units. Unfortunately, right now, that number is pretty low because we've had some issues with the units themselves. But because our birds use areas that are really close in proximity to wind farms, we try to have the majority of them wearing GPS units so that the wind farms can actually shut down operations if the birds get too close. So
Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah, so that's one of the things that we do to help manage the birds, and we're lucky that the wind farms are excited to help out as well. So next slide.
Hey,
There's 1027. She's been at our flight pen recently. Unfortunately, I haven't seen her yet in person. The 2 times I've been up for workups, she has magically gone into the Sierra. So I feel like she knows that it's trapping when we're going to have those workups, and she bounces. But other folks have seen her, and there she is feeding with another bird. And we see her on GPS hanging out with lots of birds. She's hanging out in our very popular roost sites up in the Tehachapi's and the Southern Sierra. So she's doing well, and it's pretty fun seeing her come to our release site finally.
I know. Is she kind of, I mean, she's younger in general, but is she kind of holding her own, or?
Yeah, it seems like she's really integrated into the flock. It seems like she's made some younger friends, and she's not super shy. She seems to get in there with at least some of the other juveniles. You know, she's still a little skittish with like the older birds, but that's to be expected with these younger birds. So yeah, she's doing pretty well, and she looks good. She looks healthy, and yeah, it's
You just
pretty
got to
awesome.
wonder just how intimidating that's got to be a young bird like that. And you fly down to this well-established flock, you know, in this pretty amazing area of Southern Cal, you know, these big remote areas. I mean, that's pretty bold. I mean, that's pretty cool. They're social, but still
Yeah.
it's an intimidating thing to do, you know. So big kudos to 1027, boy, for stepping up.
I know. I always wonder, because she did go back to Central California for a while, like, and it looked like she went back with 1019. So I was thinking maybe it's like, oh, familiar face, I'll go back. But then she returned. So I mean, I feel like, you know, her dad's 340, and he's also a very dominant individual, and 236s as well. So she might just have some dominant genes.
She might be our Yosemite National Park nester. She might be the one.
She might be that trailblazer, which is really cool.
I'm feeling it. I mean, she's got the adventure, the feeling, you know, the sense of adventure here.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure 828 is her older sister, and she's the one that went to Mount Diablo. So
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know.
there you go. Well,
It's cool.
it's really awesome.
And again, you know, we always joke about it, you know, Central and Southern, but end of the day, we really want the birds mixing more. You know, we really want to see this. We want to see this interchange,
Yeah.
and you know, especially from the genetics too, just to see the genetics spread out and
Yeah,
push
it's really
new
cool.
areas. You know,
Yeah. And it's great. Like we've never, she's hung out for a really long time, which is really cool. So
yeah, because we've had, we should tell folks that we've had these little trips where birds will go down and hang out a few days and they come right back. But she's not only come down there twice, but hung out a while each time. So she's kind of showing that 161 pattern. So I think she's going to be wandering that way come breeding time.
We're taking all of your females.
Hey, that's all right. As long as it's all about the birds.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So you can go to the next slide. So just so folks know, at the end of 2022, we ended up with 89 birds. We currently have 85. That's due to, we've had 3 mortalities this year, and then an additional missing in the wild from last year. So we have 85 birds. This does not include our pre-fledged chicks in our nests yet. And we will be releasing 8 condors this fall. So we'll have 85 now, and then hopefully going on to more. Next slide.
Awesome.
And here is one of our chicks. So we have 7 nests right now. 4 of those we have visually confirmed, and we have we've tagged 1 individual so far. This is that 161's chick at Hopper Canyon. And yeah, like you can see our bird is definitely a little bit lighter than that other chick.
Yeah,
Still
yellow,
pretty unhappy.
Yeah, so when that chick disappears, does it go back into that little cavity there?
Yep. Yeah, it goes pretty far back. So there's like another little bowl
Chamber.
back here. I'm
little
sure that.
chamber in the back right here.
Yep.
Can you squeeze in there, or is it pretty
You
tight?
can kind of squeeze in there, and that's where they had laid the egg, actually. So the bird has moved forward since then. But
Yeah, I remember this nest for sure. This is one that's been used for years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of jogged back. That's kind of, boy, what a good spot though. Really protected.
Yeah. So we have 2 other nests that we'll do entries on. One of them is a little unsafe, and then we've got 3 other nests that we're monitoring just with GPS, just because they're so remote. It's almost impossible to get out there. So
Yep, we know how that goes.
exactly. So
it's a good problem to have, really. Yeah, it's a good, it's good that they're finding these really, really remote areas.
exactly. And that's really cool, especially when they're successful. Because then these birds can be reproductively successful without any intervention, and they can do just fine. In fact, last year we had a chick show up, and we had no idea where this chick had come from, but Condor 20 was feeding the chick at our release site, and we were really perplexed about it because his mate had died just before the egg would have hatched. And so 20 actually must have, raised this chick from hatching all by himself, which is pretty incredible. And then when we were able to trap that bird, we put a GPS unit on it, and both that chick and 20 went back to his nesting territory. So these birds are really hardy, and it's really cool.
So tough. Yeah, I think that's the earliest I've ever heard of a single parent raising a chick, right from
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's hard too. I mean,
Exactly.
that's a busy bird.
Yeah. It seems like he would just jet from Bitter Creek back. But it's
That's
still
impressive.
pretty incredible.
Awesome.
And I saw one of the questions was, what are these stains? That's those are urates and fecal material from the birds. So they're not the tidiest.
Yeah, they projectile it sometimes. They get a good if you ever watched the cams of the nest, you can see they sometimes get a good projection with that
And-
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so next slide. One last thing I wanted to let you all know is, unfortunately, unlike a lot of national wildlife refuges, Hopper and Bitter Creek, I guess all of our refuges except for Guadalupe are actually closed to the public. So you can't access those, but our friends group, the Friends of California Condors Wild and Free, does organize visits and volunteer opportunities. They have work days and tours, and they'll also set up informational and viewing booths outside of Bitter Creek National Wildlife Refuge. So if you want to learn more and sign up to volunteer, sign up for a tour, check out their website. It's friendsofcondors.org. Sorry about that coloration there, but
Oh no, you can read it. It's pretty good.
yeah. But that's it. So if I can answer any
Yeah,
questions.
this is a good time to jump into questions. Thank you so much. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, again, like I said, it's always nice, we're talking always Central California, but it's really nice to have an update on Southern California. Yeah, I think that place is pretty special, and yeah, the two flocks are one, really, as we all talk about, and eventually they will merge and be all over California and then connect up north, to
Thank you so much for sharing about 161 and showing her nest and her chick. That was awesome. It was almost like a grandparent sort of feeling.
Yeah.
yeah, we got some questions, Mike. How we looking there?
Absolutely, always some questions, and Arianna did a good job of addressing some of the questions already. But some folks would like to know more about these nest entries.
Mhm.
Are there any that you just have to say no to?
Definitely.
You mentioned some are just too far, but are there some that just look just a little too scary to attempt, or do you just throw more cables around Amy and send her up?
No, there are definitely some that are not safe to enter. If either their substrate is, around our area, the cliffs sometimes have really crumbly substrate, and so it's not safe to put anchors on those areas, or else, if you weight your ropes, the substrate can just fall apart. So some places aren't safe, or you could get loose rock falling into the nest, and we don't want that as well. Sometimes we'll go into nests, and if a bird, if the nest site isn't suitable for keeping the chick safely in its cavity, then we won't enter those. So one of the nests this year we've decided not to enter because there's really no place to go for the chick as like an escape route or as a hiding place. It's like a very shallow bowl, and there's no real porch. And so we're not going to enter that one just because we don't want the bird to force fledge and fall out of its nest. So there are definitely instances that we won't do a nest entry, either because it's too far, it's unsafe for us, it's unsafe for the bird, or it's just too remote. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just a case-by-case basis, and safety for humans and condors is certainly a top priority. We had a hurricane in California, and a lot of people want to know, it wasn't much here in Central California, but what about Southern California? Did the winds and the precipitation have an effect on the condors there?
That's a good question. Not that we saw. We definitely had to, our release sites definitely got a lot of rain, and we had to postpone workup because it was scheduled on a Tuesday and it had dumped the night before. So we wanted to let the roads dry up and the flight pen to dry up so that we weren't slipping around. But the birds seemed to fare the storm well, and we haven't seen any negative impacts from that hurricane.
They seem to like a little bit of wind for sure.
Exactly.
We enjoyed the photos of the biologists handling the birds, and the birds look so calm, and the biologists look like they're just in complete control. And you're handling the birds really by yourself. If I'm involved, I'm usually that hand that appears in the photo that maybe like stabilizing the feed or some menial job. Kara or Arianna, could you like give us some tips on how you handle condors so that it is as stress-free as possible?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, and this is probably not what you want to hear, but if you're like calm, the condor is usually calm. So they definitely kind of feed off of your energy. So like if you're just relaxed and calm, they usually are not crazy. But older birds definitely are more used to being handled, so they'll be a little chiller, whereas like wild chicks will freak out. They kind of all have their different personalities, so some are harder to handle than others. But yeah, mostly you're just trying to keep the head like contained, and then the wing kind of. But yeah, usually we have like one person holding tail and feet, and then the other person will hold head and body. But the head is really where you want to kind of focus your energy on.
Yeah, I agree with Kara. Just try to, as soon as I get a bird in the net, I try to get its wings and its like tail feathers kind of secured by pinching them a little between my legs and my knees. And then as soon as I have that bird kind of in control, I take a deep breath and try to calm my nerves before really restraining the head and getting that bird out. And then, yeah, just the calmer you are, definitely the calmer the bird is, but it is still always a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I'll say I'll stick to the sparrows and warblers and let you handle the condors. Hey, Joe, I know you're real big into eBird. I'm just kidding. But the eBirders are reporting on condors up at Lick Observatory in Mount Hamilton. Have you already gotten Evan involved at looking at where these birds are on the GPS? And are you aware of these reports?
Yeah, we have GPS to back it up. So yeah, we know it's legit. And yeah, Evan made a nice map for us, and I showed part of it earlier. It wasn't as detailed, but we've had quite a few movements. I don't forget. We don't know exactly how many birds. We know the GPS birds, but there could have been more. But it looks like a small group flew up. They tend to do that, go off in these little sorties and take a little flight up. But yeah, those are legit based on our data.
Yeah, thanks to the GPS data and observations by birders, we can follow these birds. Karen in Georgetown, Texas wants to know, how much do those radio transmitters and GPS transmitters cost? Oh, yeah.
Pretty dramatic difference. A radio transmitter is roughly around less than $300. And then a GPS, that doesn't include the data fees. You're coming out the door right at $4,000. So with the data fees, with a GPS transmitter for a few years, you're getting up closer to $6,000 to have a GPS deployed for a couple of years, including the cost of the tag. So pretty dramatic difference, but the data is also pretty dramatically different. I mean, the data you get from a GPS, it blows doors off radio telemetry. Radio telemetry is very line of sight. It's actually very useful. We lean on it it's really useful. And if you have a bird get sick or a bird's dead and you need to go recover it, we really rely on those radio transmitters to find the bird. The GPS can kind of get you in the wheelhouse, but radio transmitter is really what you're going to need to recover that bird, or a nest too. You got a pair nesting, and the GPS kind of nails it down, but the radio telemetry is really what helps you pinpoint where the nest is. or at least get you looking the right direction. So yeah, they work really well together, but yeah, the cost is dramatic. And yeah, we do a lot of fundraising and grant writing for GPS transmitters specifically. So same with Fish and Wildlife, you know, we're always all working together. Usually we try to do cooperative grants where we all work together and try to get the whole flock with these GPS, because it benefits the entire flock if we can get everybody with GPS transmitters.
Yeah, and I guess the cost would be the limiting factor on why some birds do not have the GPS, yet all birds have the radio transmitters.
Yep.
And these GPS tags can really tell us a lot about the lead poisoning threat. It can tell us a lot about wind energy development threats and how these birds are impacted by a lot of different factors on the landscape. So it's really great information. Another question that came up for Arianna is why are the birds only coming around during a small portion of the year? You said December. Why is that?
That's a good question. So the birds they do hang out at Hopper year round, but they're not as active there. It just seems like they really enjoy exploring in the Sierra during the summer and fall seasons, and then you'll have you know, your nesters and breeders who really hang out in Hopper most of the time. I don't know why they decide to come back and really start hanging out in December, that it seems to be when we have the most success trapping them in the fall. So I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it tells me about the quality of the land and habitat there as being suitable for condors, that they are spreading out and using the habitat.
Yeah, they forage quite a bit on their own, don't they, Arianna?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they forage all over the place, from Ojai to up in the Sierra and the foothills of the Sierra. There's still lots of cattle ranching opportunities, and then the mountains, you know, there's deer, elk, and other sorts of animals that they can opportunistically feed on.
Yeah, no lack of food out there for them.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And one last question. We're up against our time limit here, but going back to the HPI, the avian flu, are there any cases that have been documented in the captive population? And then also for the wild population, is testing for HPI going to be part of the normal trap up procedure?
Arianna, you can correct me, but I don't believe we've had any captive HPI. It was all the wild Arizona flock.
That's what I understand.
Yeah. And then in terms of I think the HPI, the HPI testing is kind of to be determined. It might go on for a while, I would think, in the near term for sure. But hopefully not forever, but you know, hopefully it's something that we're contending with, and with the vaccine, we'll get to move past it, kind of like we did with West Nile virus. You know, hopefully it'll be something of the past and just preparing for the next thing. So yeah, I would, you know, I think that's kind of to be determined.
Yeah, certainly the entire program's on high alert with the HPI now, and maybe a little relieved, greatly relieved that the spread hasn't been more than it already has been for the Arizona flock. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you, Arianna, for your presentation. Comments are that we love to hear about the Southern California flock, and we hope that you'll join us again anytime to talk condors with us. And we'll look forward to our next chat, which is September 28th. Do I have that right, Joe?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
so. Yeah. But yeah, honored to have you here, Arianna. Yeah, and come back, because we love to hear about the Southern flock. And yeah, maybe bring one of the other crew with you next time. We can really get in the weeds.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try to bring more folks with me next time. So
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and big shout out to your crew down there, to you, of course, and all the work Fish and Wildlife's doing. You guys are leading the way. So, we're glad we're a part of it and get to help out. And again, it's a team. Yeah, it takes a village, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we're just glad to be a part and look forward to the next update.
Sounds good.
Kelly,
All
you
right,
want to
thanks,
say parting
everybody.
words?
No, just thanks, everybody. Great to see you again. See you next time.
See
Yep.
you next
See you,
month,
everybody.
September 28th. Look forward to it.
Bye.
Thanks, Arianna.
Thanks. Bye.